Good afternoon. It's Jeffrey Cohen, President and founder of U.S. Advanced Computing Infrastructures, Inc. We're an Illinois registered investment advisory firm, and we spent some time today looking at U.S. President Biden's budget. This is the budget proposal that the president has put out, and I was reading something on CNN, and I thought, oh my gosh, I have to look at it, right? So here's what we did. You can find the budget too. This is not super secret. You do a search, White House budget on Google, and the first thing that pops up is whitehouse.gov, President's budget. So you click on it, you get a little kind of teaser page. On March 9th, President Biden released a budget, outlined his vision. That's 5 days ago. So it's very current, very real. You press the button, read the budget, and up pops a PDF. So I need to remember what page this is. It's 140 because it's really important. So you come here, budget of the U.S. government. And by the way, this is federal government. So this does not include state and local government. So Illinois would have its own budget. And so you take a look and there's lots of stuff in it. Many, many pages, right? 171 pages at least. And you see all the different departments laid out. You got a message. So I just went to summary tables. So you click on it, summary tables. And I thought to myself, how would I describe this budget if I had like a minute? And the good news is they do make it easy for you. And this is what I want to show you. So it starts off with, in 2022, the government took in $4.9 trillion. I want you to think about that for a minute. The government took in 19.6% of gross domestic product, which is all the goods and all the services made, produced, sold in the United States. Does not include gross national product, which would be investments overseas that are brought back. This is U.S. economic activity. So about 20%, 19.6, but about $5 trillion. And we spent 6.273 or 6.3. So we took in 4.9 and we spent 6.3. So the deficit's $1.4 trillion. Or it's 5.5% of gross domestic product. It took me a minute to figure this out. So let me walk you through the quick math. The overall budget receipts are 19.6% of the whole economy. So when the government is deciding how much to tax, it's thinking in terms of all national income. And it spends 25% of the national income. So I didn't know that. You know, the U.S. federal government is one federal, not state and local, not Indian tribes, not for profits, just federal, spends 1/4 of the entire GDP. It consumes 1/4 of GDP. That's a lot. I didn't know that. It's a quarter, right? So it's fine. Good. But when you look at the deficit, they don't actually pay for what they consume. So they tax 20%, they spend 25%, and they just say, we'll borrow 5.5% of the whole economy in 1 year. So think about that. That's 5.5% of the United States economy borrowed and put on the balance sheet as debt this year. That's cool. I get it. So what are we going to do next year? Well, next year it gets a little worse. So we're going to lower taxes. I love it. I didn't know President Biden was Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, but he is. He's going to lower taxes to $4.8 trillion, which is 18% of the GDP, and he's going to spend 24%. So he's tightening a little. I like it, right? But it's 6% deficit. Wow. We're borrowing 6% of our economy so that our kids could pay for it, so that we could pay for it, because they're never planning on paying this back. So that's a lot of money. That's 6%. I had no idea. So when I look at it, I always thought, I don't know. So keep going, Jeffrey. Keep going. Focus. So what happens is year after year, the deficit goes to 6.8%. Then 5.9, then 5.1, then 4.9. And when we get to 2029, somehow in 2029, we get to 4.6% deficit. But then it goes back up again to 5.1. So there's never really a good time in the current view of the proposal of the budget to ever start to pay back the debt. In fact, we're always borrowing 5%. So I want you to think about a family that earns $100,000. Now, let's say it's a wife and a husband, or it doesn't matter gender, right? It could be any two people married. They earn $100,000, okay? $25 an hour, 2 full-time jobs. And they borrow $5,000 every year. Every year, another 5. Another 5, another 5. What happens when it comes time to retire? Well, they owe like 3 or 4 times how much they earn. So when it comes time to retire, all they're really holding is a huge loan. They don't have any assets. They just borrowed a lot of them, 5% a year, forever. I want you to think about that, because that's what this budget says to do. So now what are we going to get for all this, right? I don't know. So here's now where we're at. So the debt starts at $24.2 trillion. And pretty quickly by 2027, if the current president wins re-election, the current president will still be president, except we're going to owe $32.8, and then by 2028, we'll owe a full $10 trillion more. So we'll go from $24 trillion to $34 trillion. So that's a big spend. $10 trillion more. Now, did you okay that? Like, did I never okayed that. I don't want to borrow $10 trillion more. I want to borrow no more. I want to live within our means. I want money in equal money out. And then what I really want is money in is more than money out. And we're paying off the debt. Inflation is a lot easier to fight if you don't have to worry about owing $24 trillion. So the number goes up even more by 2033. We owe 43.6 or 44 trillion. So we go from 24 trillion in 11 years to owing 44 trillion. So I got a better idea. Okay? So what did we get for all of this debt? My guess is we get more federal spending. We get a lot of federal employees, which I like. I don't mind having employees. I bet if we looked at all the money spent on federal employees, it's actually not that much. My guess is it's like a pretty small number. We could find jobs for them. We could even do like a job release program where federal employees go to work in the private sector. Government pays, let's say, half the salary. We could keep everyone employed. By the way, our company would pick up a few government workers. I'd love it. Out of the Securities and Exchange Commission or out of the Fed. I'd love some PhDs. By the way, bring them on. Pay half the salary. I'll pay half the salary. We wrap this up, right? So we're not talking about firing the hardworking men and women who work for our federal government. That's when we talk about spending $5 trillion, we're not talking about payroll. We're talking about money. We're talking about spending, I don't know, $500 billion in Ukraine. We're talking about giving money to lots of other countries. We're talking about weapon systems. We're talking about all kinds of weird stuff. And to be honest with you, if we just cut back, so here's my proposal. Let's flip the numbers. Receipts become outlays, and outlays become receipts. It's not hard. They've already got all the statistics. So now we outlay 4.8, and then we outlay 5, and then we outlay 5.7 and 6.6. So we can still spend more. You know, by 2033, we're spending about 80% more, which is a lot. I don't know that I agree with that, but that's whatever. But our receipts would go from 6.3 trillion to 7.5, 8.6, 10. So somehow we could just flip them. Now here's what happens if we do that. We flip the receipts to the outlays and the outlays to the receipts. We just got to do it. We're still spending more. It's okay. A lot more. But we're taking in more then. At the end of the 10 years, we would have built up a surplus, which would automatically go to pay down the debt, of $17 trillion. Now, $17 trillion, when you compare it to $24 trillion, is 70% of the debt. So within 10 years, you've paid off 70% of the debt. That's amazing. I gotta tell you. So instead of owing 97% of our annual income, remember the couple I told you about? The two people that earned $100,000 a year, they made $25 an hour, and they borrowed $5,000 a year every year. And after, I don't know, maybe 15 years, they owe their entire annual income in debt. Now imagine they save 5% a year. And they use that to pay down their credit card debt or their mortgage debt or their car loans or whatever. And at the end of 10 years, they only owe 30% or 30 grand, not 100 grand. They feel so much better. And imagine the interest you saved. By that 10th year, you're only paying interest on 30% of the debt. So the federal government would be saving hundreds of billions of dollars of interest payments. And I'm assuming that wouldn't go towards paying down the debt. That would just be like free money. I don't know. We'll figure out what to do with it. Maybe lower taxes with that money, right? Whatever. But that's cool. 70%. So if you flip receipts to outlays, you're still growing spending, but you're growing your tax receipts more, and you're paying down the debt, and you know what's going to happen. In a couple of years, when we're not having interest payments, right, when they're being reduced, and when the debt's reduced, and people feel richer, and the percentage of the economy that's actually consumed by the federal government goes down, we become a freer society, and people just feel better, right? Rents go down. Everything goes down because the government isn't competing for resources. I bought this calculator. Imagine if every fourth calculator was purchased by the federal government. The price would go up. It would have to. I don't want the price to go up. I want the calculator to be cheap. So please stop spending 25% of every dollar in the United States. So we got that. So I don't even have to talk about what they're going to do, right? But if I were to take a look at just big picture, right? Which of the, and maybe this is a good question, right? So we're able to pay down 70% of the debt. You'll notice that all the numbers are pretty complicated, but in simple terms, here's the outlays. So I'm going to make this even bigger for you because this is the so what right here. So where does spending go? So if you look at Social Security spending, I don't know what people are thinking, but the outlays on Social Security go from $1.2 trillion to $2.4 trillion. Why are we doubling spending on Social Security? I don't know. I don't know what the thinking is. Medicare and Medicaid. Important. This is our cost of health care, right? So Medicare, which is for the elderly, goes from 750 billion to 1.8 trillion, or almost triple. Why are we tripling spending on Medicare? I don't know. Medicaid, which is a very noble program, right? It's health insurance for those who can't afford health insurance. 600 billion to 900 billion. So we're not really going to help the poor more, which surprises me because I thought we had a very liberal Democratic administration, but maybe not so much, right? Maybe not. They want to help the elderly. Now, how old is President Biden? 79? I guess I get it, but why would you triple spending, right? Like, on elderly insurance. Defense spending goes from 750 billion to 1.1 trillion. So, in fact, defense spending goes up slower than Medicaid, and way slower than Medicare, and way slower than Social Security. So let's take a look at the cost of debt and what it does. Right now, we pay about $500 billion a year in interest on our debt. But that number will be $1 trillion by 2029. If we don't somehow pay down the debt, we go from spending $500 billion to $1 trillion. Now, I got to tell you, $1 trillion is a lot of money. $1 trillion is more than we'll spend on defense spending. We will spend more on interest payments than we will on defense spending by 2027. So which is not that long, not that far from now. By 2027, we will spend more on interest on federal debt than we will on defense. Just let that sink in and now think for a minute. We could flip receipts and outlays, and we could have 70% of our debt paid in 10 years. Now, if we're paying down the debt, that would mean that $500 billion in net interest goes down. So by 2033, if interest rates are the same, now we're paying $200 billion. That would be a lot better than 1.4 trillion. That would be a savings of 1.2 trillion. That would be a savings every year. My daughter is 13. She's going to have to carry her fair share of $1.2 trillion a year forever. Why would we do that to her? I have sons. My sons are going to have to pay it too. My son does landscaping as a federal contractor. He makes good money. I helped him. I helped buy him a truck. A used truck, about 10 years old. But it's a nice truck. It's a good truck, actually. It's a Ford 150, F-150. And he's going to pay a lot in taxes to pay for that interest. So I got a better idea. Let's tough it up now. Let's flip receipts and outlays, and let's pay down 70% of that debt. It's a budget, right? We make budgets. Families make budgets. The government can make a budget. So that's all I wanted to tell you. So if you want to find it, and you can see all the details, it's so interesting. You just type White House budget into Google search. White House budget. You see this page, President's budget. You look at it. You hit the button, read the budget. Up comes this PDF. And it may take you a long time to read it because it's like 200 pages. But I wouldn't start with the flowery words, because the flowery words are going to manipulate you. They're going to say things like, people are starving in the streets and we got to help them. But that's not what this budget's about. This budget is about interest expense. It's about Medicare. It's about Social Security spending. And it's about squeezing defense spending and Medicaid, which of all of the spending, I think Medicaid is probably the most important. These are the poor people who can't afford health care. Truly poor, and you give them money to go to the hospital or to go to a doctor's appointment. That they're shrinking with defense spending. But Social Security and old people's insurance, Medicare, is going to go through the roof. So this is it. Please take a look. Please read it. If you like the video, we're not paid to make the video, so consider subscribing. We talk about the stock market. We talk about bonds. Sometimes we talk about taxes. We talk about budgets. We like to do this. It's nice. So hit the subscribe button if you'd like, and you can follow along. You can check out our website, which is www.chicagoquantum.com. Thanks so much for watching. By the way, if you go to our website, www.chicagoquantum.com, here's what you see so you know it's us. We're tech consultants and registered investment advisors here in Illinois. Thanks so much. Bye-bye now.